The billionaire Peter Thiel has a question he always asks himself. How can I accomplish my 10-year plan in the next 6 months? That type of thinking is really powerful. Tim Ferriss actually adds a caveat to that. He says, how would I achieve my 10-year plan in the next 6 months if I had a gun to my head? So it's a really amazing question. If you only had 6 months to accomplish something, you would change your strategy dramatically. And if it was do or die, you'd definitely change your strategy. So in this video, I'm going to share with you how you can accomplish more in 1 year than you have in the last 10. Or put another way, how you can accomplish 10 times more in the next 12 months than you have in any other year. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share with you a slide that teaches you how motivation works. And then I'm actually going to share with you my own goals for this year. I'm filming this video at the beginning of 2021. Not sure when you're going to see this, but I'm going to use my own goal structure and share with you how to structure your goals, because there's two types of goals. There's ends goals and there's means goals. There's means and then there's ends. There's process goals and then there's outcome goals. And then there's also certain types of goals or keystone goals that can help you accomplish a ton. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and show you how this works. So this is a image created by the culture design company called Gaping Void, and this is based on expectancy theory. Expectancy theory is one of the core theories of motivation. And according to this theory, there are 3 steps to being highly motivated. First, you have to have a compelling goal. A compelling goal means that you desperately or genuinely want the outcome. You want it so bad that it's something you're willing to make your identity. Whatever it is you want, you can actually change your identity so that you can have it. So it could be you have $1 million, it could be you have an amazing relationship with your spouse. Whatever your goal is, it needs to be compelling to you. You have to have a why for it. You have to have a reason. As Viktor Frankl said, when the why is strong enough, you'll find the how. And that takes me to number 2. You have to have a how. So you have to have an outcome. You have to start there. What is the result you want? It has to be compelling. Then you have to have a path to getting there. And usually you start with the outcome. What is it that you specifically want? And then you have to reverse engineer the path. And you usually do that by researching it and by asking people who have already walked that path. The third thing you need is confidence that you can actually get from A to B. And that comes by usually taking steps, by clarifying the path. So you need these 3 things to have motivation. And with that said, I'm going to now share with you my goals for 2021 and how this works, and ultimately how you can structure your goals so that you can accomplish way more in 2021 or just in any 12-month period of time than you ever have before. So these are just a few of the goals I have right now. I want to add 2 to 5 million to my net worth. And I think one thing that's important is that your goals should have a range. Rather than just being so specific about a certain number, have a range, because hopefully you actually outperform your initial goal. So I have a few programs that I sell. I've got a course called AMP Gold. I've got a course called AMP Platinum. So I'll be able to make a lot of money through that. I actually have 4 book deals that I'm currently working on. I also want to get, so these are my ends goals, by the way. And I don't recommend you have more than 3 outcome goals. You want to be very specific about your outcomes, but don't have more than 3. As Jim Collins said in the book Good to Great, if you have more than 3 priorities, you have none. So you shouldn't have more than 3 major work goals as it relates to your life. If you have 5 to 10 goals, you're going to have too much split focus. You're not going to be in enough flow. You're going to be dealing with too much decision fatigue. There's a great quote that says, we're kept from our goal, not by obstacles, but by a clear path to a lesser goal. So you don't want lesser goals. You don't want too many goals. You want no more than 3 outcomes you're chasing. So for me, this is one outcome, which is to increase my net worth by 2 to 5 million. These are the means through which I'm going to do it. So these are process goals. These are the 3 outcome goals. Book deals, YouTube subscribers, publish 500 videos on YouTube, set up a powerful partnership on a book project. One of the things that I do since I'm an author is I set up co-authorships with people that I want to work with or learn from, people who can mentor me. I end up writing books with them. So just as an example, I wrote this book, Who Not How, with Dan Sullivan. Dan Sullivan is the founder of Strategic Coach. This is the #1 entrepreneurial coaching company in the world. And Dan is very hard to get access to, but I was able to create a partnership with him because I said, Dan, I love your ideas. Do you want to do a book together? I'll write the book, and this can be something you can use to grow your business. And so I want to set up, one of my big goals is to learn real estate investing. And so I'm going to be partnering with someone who's huge in the real estate world, and I'm going to write a book with them, and I'm going to use the book to build their credibility, but I'm also going to use the book for me to be a way to learn and be a guinea pig from their best knowledge and skills. I'm going to get mentored by them. I'm going to document the process, and through the midst of that, I'm going to be quickly translated to increasing my goals. Again, going back to motivation, you need a clear outcome, you need a process or a path to getting there, and then you need to build the confidence that you can do that. Well, one of the ways you can shortcut that is by teaming and collaborating with people who are already where you want to be. You can bring something to the table. So I already know someone, for example, who's worth over $100 million, who's just a mogul in the real estate world, and he loves my books. And so he wants to do a book with me, and so I can partner with him, I can do a book with him, and ultimately that book can position him in a powerful way, but also that book can help him achieve his goals, grow his business. But through writing that book, I can learn all of his best methods, and also he can fast track me to success because I'm ultimately putting myself in the position of being his case study. I'm being his case study so that I can write and document his best methods. And so you want to put yourself in a position where you can get mentored by and collaborate with your partners. These are all of my process goals. This is my outcome. One of my other goals is just to publish 3 to 4 books and ultimately sell. This is kind of an outcome goal, but this is just something I've added. Really, the main goal is to publish 3 to 4 books. I also want to run a 100-mile ultra marathon. And this is where I'm going to get into keystone habit and also process stacking. So there's a concept called habit stacking in kind of the productivity world. And habit stacking is where you basically bolt on a new habit that you want to have to something that already exists. So for example, if you wake up every morning and start brushing your teeth, you know you're going to brush your teeth. That's already an established habit. But if you want to add a new habit, you want to stack that habit or link that habit to brushing your teeth. You could put a book, for example, right next to your toothbrush so that every time you start brushing your teeth in the morning, which is a habit that already exists, you've now you can pick up your book and go read 2 pages. You've now stacked 2 habits together. Well, process stacking is kind of similar. It builds on the idea of keystone habit, but it also builds on the idea of habit stacking. So a keystone habit is one thing you do that ultimately bleeds into everything else. One good example of that is journaling. If you start journaling in the morning, that one habit starts to change everything else that you're doing. It starts to make you have more emotional clarity, more mental clarity. It helps you be more motivated towards your goals, helps you to feel better. So that is one habit that positively influences all other areas of your life. Well, this is one process that bleeds into everything else I'm doing. Let me give an example. So while I'm training and running and training up for this 100-mile ultra marathon, which is going to take me hours and hours and hours, one of the things I want to do while I'm running is listening to audiobooks. Well, if I listen to 100 audiobooks, not only am I now using my time better while running, but these books fuel the books I'm writing. These books fuel the YouTube videos I'm creating. These books fuel my AMP content. AMP is an online course that I run. So this one process influences all of the outcomes I'm doing. That's why process stacking is so powerful. Now, there's something else I really want to tell you as it relates to, so here's a few of the just nuts and bolts recommendations I give you. Have no more than 3 clear outcomes you're pursuing. Define the outcomes and then think about what are the best paths or processes to getting there. There's a difference between path and outcome. The outcome is what determines the process. So don't get those things mixed up. A lot of people, they're overly they're overly process focused, but what matters more than the process is the outcome. There's a great quote from Tim Grover. He said, when you want the result bad enough, you'll do whatever's involved in getting it. Again, when the why is strong enough, you'll find the how. And people who are highly adaptive, they're willing to change their process in order to get the outcome that they want. They're willing to unlearn old ways. And I highly recommend you get very clear on the outcome, reverse engineer the best process, and then team with someone who's already got the outcome you want so that they can streamline you there. That'd be kind of like a way of slipstreaming. Slipstreaming is a powerful method. So in cycling, slipstreaming is when a cyclist is riding in front and there's a rider right behind him, and all of the air pressure is being pushed by the person in front, and so it pulls the rider in the back. Slipstreaming is a way to cheat time. I actually wrote a book way back in the day called Slipstream Time Hacking. And so working with mentors and people who are already where you want to be and, obviously incentivizing them to help you is a very fast way to save years or decades of time. Now, there's a super important concept that I want to share with you because this is called The Gap in the Gain. This is a book by Dan Sullivan. He's who I wrote Who Not How with, and Dan Sullivan and I are actually turning The Gap in the Gain into a major book with Hay House. It actually comes out in October of 2021. But the reason I'm bringing up The Gap in the Gain is this. You will never be happy if you're in what Dan calls the gap. The gap is when you're comparing or measuring your current self against some ideal that doesn't exist. So obviously you want to have goals. You want to have a future you're striving for. But if you're always measuring yourself against those ideals or measuring yourself against some other people, so the world is always pushing things into your face. You're hearing all sorts of things, you need to be attractive, you need to be a millionaire, you need to do all these different things. You are being pushed and bombarded, and so you're creating these constant comparisons. And you will never, there's a great quote, the comparison is the thief of joy. If you're comparing or measuring yourself against anything external or against even your own future ideals, you will never be happy. It doesn't matter if you're a billionaire. If you're in the gap, you will not be happy. That's basically the idea of you're always pursuing the next thing. You're always hoping that happiness is around the next corner. There's a lot of high performers and a lot of people who are successful who are very sad, and they will never be happy, even though they think that once they accomplish that next thing, they'll never be happy. And so an important thing to recognize is that the only way to be happy and the only way to accurately measure yourself is by measuring who you are right now versus who you were in the past. That's the only way to accurately measure where you're at right now. Dan calls that being in the game. So basically, rather than measuring yourself against your goals, you want to obviously have clear goals, have clear timelines, and then courageously pursue those. But you want to reflect on where you were before. Take the time to accurately measure your gains. So for example, my 2020 key outcomes were I published 2 books, one of them being Personality Isn't Permanent, one being Who Not How. And both of those books were successful. I also had our 6th child. Baby Rex was born. I got 4 book deals for future books, donated more than I've ever donated to my church, invested more into my long-term future than I've ever invested. The only reason I bring this up is this. It's easy for me to go in the gap. And even though this was potentially the biggest year of my life, speaking of 2020, I left 2020 to some degree feeling slightly unsatisfied. And I was thinking about all the areas where I didn't do what I could do. So when you're in the gap, you might get like an A- on a test and you'll only focus on like the 2 problems you missed. You won't appreciate that you actually got 98% right, And so what you want to do if you want to be happy is look back on what you did and appreciate what you did, take stock in what you did. So I highly recommend you pull out your journal and actually document all the things that you actually accomplished last year and then frame it as a gain, and always just compare yourself against your former self. That could be from a year ago. It could be from 3 months ago. Every 3 months, you could actually measure the progress, measure the gains. And that's really the only thing you want to measure yourself against. So you use your vision of your future self to set specific, tangible goals, have your 3 outcomes, courageously chase those goals. But every 3 months, you've made amazing progress, then measure yourself against where you were before. There's a lot of people who have this wrong. Like, for example, James Clear, who I love, he's got this amazing book called Atomic Habits, but one thing he said very incorrectly is he said that goals lead to unhappiness. That's not true. The reason James is unhappy with goals is because he's in the gap. Every time he accomplishes a goal, he's measuring himself against some external indicator. He's not measuring himself against where he was before. If you're in the gain, then goal setting becomes really beautiful. You need goals because the goal shapes your process. The goal gives you direction. And as you courageously chase your goals, then even if you didn't quite get there, you still made progress. For example, if you're at 0 and your goal's at 10, but you only get to 8, if you're in the gap, you're only thinking about the 2 you missed. If you're in the gain, you realize you're now farther than you were before. And from this new launch pad, you can actually go way beyond maybe what you initially imagined. So goals do not create unhappiness. Unhappiness comes because of what you're measuring yourself against. And if you're always measuring yourself against ideals that don't exist, or measuring yourself against someone else's standard for success or happiness, if you're always comparing yourself to other people, you can't be happy no matter what you accomplish. But goals are not what make you unhappy. Goals are essential to success. Goals are essential to creating a process. Goals are essential to directing your life and taking ownership of who you are. The only reason you're unhappy is because you're not measuring yourself correctly. The only way to measure yourself correctly in order to be happy is to measure your current self against where you were before. And that's the only really genuine and accurate way you can measure yourself against reality. And by doing that regularly, not only do you get excited about how much progress you've made, but you get more and more excited to make more progress. BJ Fogg, the Stanford psychologist, he wrote an amazing book right here called Tiny Habits. One of the things that he talks about is that celebration is essential to forming habits. Emotions are actually what create habits more than repetition. And emotions come when you actually feel successful at what you're doing. And so celebrating small wins or big wins is crucial to reinforcing doing more of the thing you want to do. And so it's crucial to look back on where you were before, to measure your gains, to measure your progress, and to compare yourself against your former self. As Ernest Hemingway said, nobility is not being superior to other people. Nobility is about being superior to your former self. If you take time regularly to measure yourself against where you were before, you're going to feel excitement. It's going to give you more excitement to set more goals, because when you set more goals and then you actively chase them, you're going to be making gains. And then you obviously, wherever you land, you compare it to where you were before and you'll see the progress. That'll give you confidence. It'll give you learning. It'll give you capability because you courageously pursued your goal. Every time you set a new goal, you've got to courageously chase it because the goal is above your current capability. As Dan says, confidence is built by making progress towards goals that are above your current capabilities. You're setting goals up here that are above your current confidence and capability, so it takes commitment and courage. It takes you courageously pursuing it. Whatever progress you make, you look back, you compare it against your former self, and you're like, holy cow, I've made huge progress. So that is ultimately how you can accomplish 10 times more. You set 3 clear outcomes. You set high quality processes. You ultimately team with people who are already where you want to be and ultimately let them slipstream you there. And all the while you're measuring yourself against your former self, not against anyone else. I don't care what anyone else thinks of my own results because the only person I'm comparing myself is my former self. And I'm really clear that I don't need anyone else's approval. And you don't need anyone else's approval either. And so that allows you to healthily measure yourself against yourself so that you can then be happy versus never being happy because you're constantly measuring yourself against something that doesn't exist, some ideal that's out there, or someone else, which who knows what their actual goal is. You don't want to actually constantly mimic and compare yourself to other people because chances are when you get to know them, you might be disappointed. There's a great quote that says, never meet your heroes, because when you do, you end up being disappointed. Your heroes probably don't have the same ultimate goals that you have. You can learn from them. For example, I can learn from an author about how to write better, but I don't want to necessarily overly mimic them because my goals at the end of the day might not be the same as theirs. My values at the end of the day might not be theirs. So hopefully that helps. I'm Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Link down below to my free 30-day Future Self course, and then also videos will pop up to some of my other videos. Have an amazing day.